No, he is the CEO of ProVeg International, an international food awareness organization which is working to reduce animal consumption across the globe by 50% by the year 2040. It's an ambitious goal, and I'm glad to welcome Sebastian here to tell us all about how he is leading these efforts across the globe.
So, hello everybody, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good. Well, so I got bad news and I got good news for you. So, well, the bad news first. You know, this is about lessons from all around the world, and well, I'm the German one here, so you cannot expect any jokes during this session. The good news is, however, my soap's stuck anyway, so you know, we're missing out on everything. Yeah, I always really love to come to this conference because it's, you know, just amazing to see so many like-minded people from all over the world, you know, coming here and, you know, sharing their ideas and inspirations and, you know, being so like-minded. And actually I have questions with you. Who of you actually envisions a vegan world as the ideal state? So yes, I guess that's a lot of people. And I think that's actually what unites us all. I actually have a picture. That's how some might envision the vegan world. I mean, there are obviously different versions. But what they all have in common is that if you look at the world today, they're still far away. I mean, that's how visions are. You know, they are, you know, what we thrive to, but they are far away. So the big question obviously arises: how do we get from where we are now to the world that we want to have? And I want to use the analogy. I mean, like looking at this picture, that, you know, we basically need a space program that is going to get us there. And this is basically what we do, or what the aim is. How do we reach that vegan world? Now, in order to set up a space program, you basically need two things. Do you have any guesses besides the rocket?
Money.
Yes, you need money. We'll come to that later. And technology. Well, lots of people. Yes, lots of people who are really motivated to actually make progress. So, when it comes to motivation, and, you know, we are talking about food, let's take a look what people are motivated in terms of food, because there are actually surveys being done questioning people what is most important when it comes to food. Now, before I come up, I showed you the first, the first adjective or the first noun that's most important to people. What would you guess it is? If you ask people what they care most about, how they choose their food. Taste, exactly. Yes, people know that. Any guesses for the second one?
Convenient, right?
Yeah, okay. So the next one is safety. Obviously, you don't want to be poisoned. It should be nutritious. It shouldn't be too expensive. Ideally, it should look nice, be natural. Animal welfare is important for some people. It should be convenient. Should be good for the environment. Depends on where. I mean, if people want to know where it comes from. It should be produced in a fair way. And, you know, if it's new, that's also something exciting. So this is basically what people say when they're being asked. I mean, they do these food surveys all the time, and I mean, sometimes it fluctuates a bit. If there was like a big outbreak, then maybe safety is a bit more important, but that's generally the pattern that we see. And what we have done is we have basically grouped most of those components and have clustered them into 5 sections, which is taste, health, animals, justice, and environment. And we'll just come back to that. So what did we say was the second thing that we need for a successful space program? Yes, money. So the question is, where is the money? I mean, I know this is an animal rights conference, so we are all animal motivated. So, you know, we actually would think, okay, you know, maybe there are people who care about animal and would give us money. But let's take a look at how the budgets are being distributed around the world. Well, actually, these are German statistics, but the proportions are similar in most Western countries. So when we look at different causes, you know, we look, for example, at animal charities, we look at developmental aid and world hunger relief organizations, we look at climate and environmental protection or health issues. Let's start with animal charities. The yearly budget, and I guess these are German statistics, the yearly budget for animal charities or animal welfare in general is about $300 million. So obviously that sounds like a lot of money, but in the whole scheme of things, 300 million is actually not so much. So when it comes to developmental aid and world hunger relief, do you think there is more money being spent in our society or less than for animal charities? More, exactly. So here we look at the statistics. it's about $18 billion. Again, that's just for Germany, it's going to be, but similar proportions in other countries. How much do you think environmental and climate protection? Is that more or less?
Less.
Less?
Less than development.
Okay. Well, at least in Germany, I mean, it's quite a lot that's being spent. It's about $40 billion. And how much do you think diet-related health issues? This is going to be prevention and treatment. Is that
More.
yes, that's actually even bigger. So this is about 70 or close to $80 billion. So obviously, you know, if we want to build a successful space program, it doesn't really frame our mission as being all about animal welfare, because, you know, whether it comes to motivation or whether it comes, you know, motivating individuals or whether it comes to getting the necessary budget, you know, to build our rocket, it's probably better to also tap into these other budgets because then you have way more. And this is the reasons why, again, we have to find these 5 different reasons, which are taste, health, justice, animals, and environment. And we also call them like the 5 pros of ProVeg, which is pro-taste, pro-health, pro-justice, pro-animals, and environment. And this is also the reasons why we actually believe that a vegan diet or a plant-based diet is actually a multi-problem solution for many of the world's problems. You know, one agency actually called us, oh, so you kind of like the other Swiss Army knives of NGOs. And we actually kind of liked it, so we stuck with it. And we've also actually defined our vision in that regard. So we don't actually, I mean, obviously amongst youth, I can say that, you know, we thrive for a vegan world. But generally, we say that our vision is a world where everyone chooses delicious and healthy food that is good for all humans, animals, and our planet. But then again, you know, if you look, as we said, you know, visions are far away. So we thought, okay, maybe there's a step in between that might make sense. And this also is actually, if you look at rocket science, it's actually quite common. Because if you want to go really far with a rocket, you usually don't build like a single rocket that takes you all the way. You have several stages of a rocket. And we also have a first stage, so to speak, and this is what we call our mission 50 by 40, what Michael already mentioned. And this is the goal to reduce global animal consumption by 50% by the year 2040. Because similar like in space or in rocket science, you know, you need about 80% of the energy is needed just to get the whole rocket out of space. And then you launch the second stage, and then it's going to be much easier to make the rest of the journey wherever you want to go. And what's also really important when you talk about 50 by 40, or, you know, reducing by 50 by 40, many people who used to be your enemies are suddenly your friends. So I'd just like to give you a little overview. When you look at different institutions, so let's, for example, like, you know, we work a lot with environmental organizations, you know, whether it's the United Nations Environmental Program, whether it's WWF or Greenpeace. If you ask them, well, what do you think of a vegan world? Or, you know, is that something you can envision yourself? They're not really excited about that. But if you tell them, what do you think about, you know, reducing animal consumption by 50%? They would say, oh yeah, that sounds actually reasonable. And, you know, we've been working with Greenpeace for a number of years, and as you probably know, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, they actually came around and have developed or have embraced the 50% reduction goal. If you look at World Health Organizations, so the first is like the, you know, World Health Organization, the second one is the German Nutrition Society or health insurance, then usually if you talk about an all-vegan world where everybody eats vegan from, you know, babies to elderly, they, you know, oh my God, you know, get away from us. But when you say, well, what do you think about reducing by 50%? Most of them actually say, yeah, you're actually right from a health perspective, you know, animal consumption is really too high, so we totally on board with, you know, reducing consumption of animal products, by the way. And similar when you talk to big companies, whether it's Nestle, Unilever, or nonetheless, if you tell them, well, they're vegan, they don't get too excited, but, I mean, but 50 by 40, they're just, okay, that's, you know, we can see, you know, we might even be able to make a profit, you know, with that trend.
No jokes.
And last but not least, you know, when you look at government, whether it's, you know, the Chinese government, the European Union, or the United Nations, and again, vegan world is something that they don't really can get behind, but with 50 by 40, that's certainly something they can see them doing. And it's actually not only institutions, it's also individuals. So a while ago, we did together with quite a known meat company in Germany, a survey what people can see themselves doing. And this is the proportions of the German population if you consider that there's a spectrum from being totally carnistic, which means eating a lot of animal products, to being vegan, we have about 40% hardcore carnistic people, about 50 to 56% flexitarians, about 4 to 9, depending on the survey, vegetarians, and I think at the moment it's probably roughly 1% of vegans. And then obviously we want everybody to move more to the right. But when we've asked people what they can see themselves doing, we had the two people the two groups on the left. 41% actually said that they can see themselves reducing their consumption of animal products even further. If we ask them, well, can you see yourself going vegetarian? At least 20% say, yeah, that's something doable. But when we ask, well, can you see yourself going vegan? The numbers really dropped. So also when it comes to public perception, it's probably good, not to have that, go vegan or die kind of message, but to have a more strategic approach. And this is also why we actually turned our mission of 50 by 40. We started off actually only as the mission of ProVeg to turn this into a much bigger goal. So in the moment we are actually, or at the moment we are setting up an alliance, or actually we have done so for the past year. It's called the 50 by 40 Alliance or 50 by 40 Coalitions, where we bring together a large numbers of NGOs, whether it's Greenpeace or the NRDA, NRDC, or we don't have the NRA yet, but we're working on it. And organizing and coming up with joint campaigns, joint activities, or also bringing in more funders. So we had last year we had already a funders gathering where again, this makes it way more attractive for example, like Rockefeller Foundation or Ford Foundation or any other big philanthropic foundations who would not be interested in the vegan world, but they get on board with with a health message or an environmental message. So this is something that we're quite excited about. On a general level, our core strategy, when people ask us, well, how is ProVeg thinking of changing the world, is we don't really, see it as the most efficient way to target, close to 8 billion people, one after the other. It's just too many. So what we have done is we have identified the key levers in societies, whether that's the media sector or the chefs and caterer or the food industry or educational system. And within those target group or key target groups, we always try to identify the multipliers or the leaders in that sector, and then try them to move into the more vegan direction, because then it's more likely that others follow. So for example, numbers of years ago, we've worked with the most famous meat company in Germany who has developed vegetarian vegan products, and following after that, a lot of other meat companies actually have followed suit. So I'll give you an overview. So for example, like when we do campaigning, the picture you actually see is not really appropriate, because what we actually do for campaigning, we, for example, target the United Nations. Because obviously if we reach them to embrace something, or with the medical conference, we've joined forces with Europe's largest health research institute and hospital, Charité. When we do school programs, for example, we work with Eurex, which is Europe's largest catering company for schools. So many of those activities we always try to focus on. When we do corporate engagement, we work with McDonald's, other caterers. When we do fairs and events, we work with, for example, at BioFab, which is the world's largest organic fair that we work together. When we work with food service companies, again, we have a partnership with the Compass Group. When we do food labeling, we work with the largest supermarket. So all of that is to say, because once we get those to shift, we can create a huge change in societies. And then actually, as I said, in terms of funding, this actually has quite a good implication. So for example, we've been able to, or we are part of a consortium of, I think, 34 partners, which under the grant program Horizon 2020 from the European Commission was able to secure a $9 million grant from the European Union to develop new proteins. So this is actually pretty amazing, because we as an NGO, we don't have to put any philanthropic or any donations towards the project. We are 100%, our activities within the project are 100% covered by taxpayers. So that's, and again, by not framing ourselves as an animal charity, but saying, look, we want to create new jobs and in markets of the future. This is about the protein diversification. This is about the global protein shift that needs to happen. And the European Commission really thought, oh, those guys seem to be legitimate actors. They have numbers of amazing partners. So in that whole consortium, we were able to secure a lot of funding. And another thing, as I said, we've been targeting the United Nations for a while, have been going to their climate summits, and actually, I would like to show you a video. Actually, it's made up of 2 videos of success we recently had in that regard. So the United Nations, they always have these lighthouse activities where they highlight, the most promising activities that they see. But let me should actually be explained. See if that works with the sound.
Momentum for Change shines a light on some of the world's most inspiring solutions to climate change. We call these solutions lighthouse activities because they are beacons guiding us towards a more sustainable and resilient future. The 2018 lighthouse activities come from all corners of the globe and all levels of society, from communities, governments, businesses, organizations, and universities. People are working together to create lasting solutions to safeguard our health and the natural systems that support us. To ensure a viable future for all, activities are measuring their emissions, reducing what they can, and supporting climate actions projects around the world. Women are powerful leaders who are tackling climate change head-on and inspiring others to do the same. Governments and businesses are creating funding opportunities to generate jobs, strengthen economies, and boost sustainable development. Together, these activities highlight some of the most innovative, scalable, and exciting examples of what people are doing to take climate action. The 2018 Lighthouse activities, shining a light to show there's momentum for change, change for good.
Okay, so that was the general introduction, and then they made one video that I'm going to show now.
Children deserve to eat nutritional and sustainable food. 2 NGOs are working together to provide healthy, climate-friendly meals in German schools.
Production of animal products causes more greenhouse gas emissions than the whole transport sectors with all ships, cars, and planes combined. Thus, shifting from an animal-based diet toward a more plant-based diet is good for our planet, for the climate, and our health alike. With our joint projects, plant-powered pupils, and climate-efficient school kitchens, we take a two-pronged approach. On the one hand, we promote individual health by teaching children how to prepare sustainable and healthy meals. On the other hand, we work on planetary health by training chefs and cooks in school canteens to provide more sustainable and healthy food.
We have shown how emissions could be reduced by several measures to serve healthy and inexpensive and climate-efficient meals. Es ist für die Erde alternativlos, das Aufklären macht, weil einfach die Zusammenhänge auf der Erde so dramatisch sind. Die Jungen, die sind offener für dieses Thema und die Jungen, die sind vorurteilsfrei und die wehren sich zu diesem Thema ganz anders. Es ist nur eine Generation, wenn wir dramatisch sagen, wie ältere Menschen leben und wenn die Generation jünger rankommen, und darum ist es so wichtig, dass eine neue Generation, junge Menschen heranwächst, die diese Zusammenhänge in die Gesellschaft tragen und dass sich die Welt auch verändert.
Yes, so thank you very much. So that was a project that we've had, and the interesting thing is actually the guy who was speaking only in German, that he's actually from a health insurance company who has actually sponsored that project for us for I think 3 years now. So it's actually quite exciting to see that, again, we did not have to tap so much into our budget, but we actually had health insurance cover the costs to do those training. Okay. Yes. Okay, I should hurry up. I was also told to talk a brief bit about our activities in China because our Asian representative couldn't be there, so I just briefly included a few slides here. Yeah, so we have been active in China for, I think a year and a half by now, organizing, I mean, again, you know, not so much taking the animal approach. In fact, I was interviewed by China Central Television about, you know, our work, and I was telling them about our vision. As you've seen earlier, you know, a world where everyone chooses delicious and healthy food that is good for all humans, animals, and the planet. And I was interrupted and asked if I could repeat that same sentence without mentioning the animals, because that does not go over well in Chinese television. Anyway, I said that, you know, so again, but what really works well is, you know, the health message and the environmental message, and just from a really business perspective, you know, just saying, look, this is a great business opportunity. There are lots of companies, a lot of innovation happening, and this is actually why we've helped organize the first Veggie Worlds, which is a vegan fair that we have developed about, I think, 6-7 years ago. We're spread out to, I think, 20 locations in 9 different countries. And, you know, as you can see here, that was the one in Hong Kong. We had another one in Hangzhou, and next year we are aiming for Beijing and in Shanghai. You know, whether it's having panel discussions or bringing, you know, delicious Western foods like oatmeal, as you can see here on the Chinese market, to get you know, these 1.5 billion Chinese people excited about plant-based eating. We also do a lot of lobbying. You might have heard that the European Union, similar to the US, is trying to ban the use of the word burgers for referring to plant-based burgers. So we've started a petition. We created an alliance between a lot of organizations to stop the veggie burger ban. I think we have by now over 60,000 signatures, and are speaking to members of parliament to get that ban off the table. On a more grassroots level, we're also coordinating the Worldwide Vegan Bake Sale, which was actually started in the US, and I think we've had about, 27 different countries participating, over 100 activities to make the world a better place. And together with Plant-Based News, we have launched the World Plant Milk Day, which is actually happening in a few weeks. So you can, if you just Google Plant World Milk Day, you will find and see how you can participate. What has also proven to be quite successful is rankings and benchmarking. So we do all kinds of rankings, whether it's supermarkets or restaurant chains. So you can see, like, also compare them in different countries. So how, for example, McDonald's is doing in the US compared to, well, you know, what do they have in the US, Poland, Germany, the UK. And you might have heard that actually this year McDonald's finally came around in Germany and introduced the McVegan, which is the first vegan burger in a large country to my knowledge, like Germany. I think they had some smaller test markets, and so far the sales are going really well. And the media actually, when they reported about it, they were actually naming our ranking that we started back in 2016, where McDonald's really, as you can see, was not really doing so well. So this kind of like motivated McDonald's to do better. We've also launched an incubator program where we support startups all around the world with a 4-month program. I'll go quickly over that. So, you know, whether we do providing a co-working space, marketing, product testing, you know, connecting them with potential investors. We've already had 2 cohorts participating. So all these startups you can see are have been part of our incubator program. So I know most of them you cannot buy it in the US, but I think some of them are really very promising. So yeah, so keep an eye on that. And last but not least, you know, some of you might have thought when we said that our goal is to reduce global animal consumption by 50% by 2040, that this is quite an ambitious goal. Yet, you know, we've launched this goal 2 years ago, and we're already getting back up from quite some renowned entities. There's a consulting agent or a company called A.T. Kearney, which recently published a report on how cultured meat and meat alternatives disrupt the agriculture and food industry. And they made this nice graphic. I don't know if they were inspired by us, but they choose 2040 as their target year, and they were actually already, as you can see, they are assuming that by 2040, regular meat, conventional meat will only make up about 40% of the global market, and that there will be a reduction of 33%. And I think if we all do a great job, we can probably get even better than the 33% and maybe, or hopefully achieve the 50% that we aim for. So coming back to our space rocket program, as I said, our vision is quite far away, but we have a clear strategy on how we want to get there by achieving the 50 by 40 goal first, which will, once we have achieved this, put us in a great position to take us all the way further to create the vegan world that we all want to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian. So yeah, we have about 10 minutes for question and answer. If anyone has any questions, please come up to the microphone. They are being recorded, and please make sure it's actually a question rather than a statement. If you have thoughts on these sessions, you can talk to the speakers afterward. There's also wrap sessions, which are open discussion. So this is really meant to be a specific question for one of the two speakers, since we're only going to have time for probably 3 or 4. So thanks, everyone.
Good morning. Thanks for your fantastic presentations. Is it possible to get the slideshow for either of them, like via email, for example? Are you two both amenable to that?
Yeah.
Or should I call?
We'll stay around.
Sorry?
We'll stay around after everybody's gone, so I can give you my card afterwards.
Okay, thank you so much. It was really jam-packed with information.
I'd like to reiterate the thanks for the great presentation. I'm very curious about ProVeg USA. I'm excited about so much that you're doing, especially raising consciousness through rankings, because I think that everyone loves a list. And I could see where in your situation had a direct impact on perhaps in policy. So I'm wondering what plans are to roll out any kind of similar programs in the United States. Thank you.
Yeah, that's funny. Sebastian and I were just talking yesterday about starting some of those rankings in the US. So I would say that right now the main thing we're doing is just looking at which gaps are most needed. Obviously the US movement is a lot more, I think, developed in some of these sectors than the German movement was, where ProVeg basically is the vegan movement in many ways. So right now we're spending the next few months just talking to leaders from the food movements and figuring out which of ProVeg's pillars are most important to tackle soon versus which ones might be taken care of well enough that we can, delay our actions for a little longer, defer our actions rather. But yeah, the rankings we were just actually saying yesterday is probably going to be one of the priorities. The other one is going to be activist trainings, the SIVA trainings that Melanie Joy and Tobias put on. So if anyone's interested in those, you can talk to me afterward probably, so we can start figuring out which locations to host those in. And other than that, I think we'll be launching, talking more about our plans later this fall when we have a better idea of what the priorities will be. Thank you.
Julianne, thanks for your presentation as well. Have there been any sanctuaries opening with regard to wild animals in Colombia and other South American?
You mean wild animals?
Wild, yes.
There is not.
Not yet?
No. Just in South America, there is one in Brazil. In Brazil is the one that I know, because it's the Amazonia, there is more wild animals. But not in Colombia. The government have like some places in some series to protect wild animals, but it's not called a sanctuary. But they have, actually one of our veterinarians came from that areas because he's a specialist in birds, so it's the closer to chickens we have. But in Colombia there is no sanctuary for wild animals. There is some entities from the government who care, but it's not like a sanctuary.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. It's for Sebastian. When you talk about new proteins, do you mean repurposing existing proteins, or do you mean new proteins?
Well, it's a combination of both. I mean, on the one hand, new protein can be clean meat or clean meat, eggs, and dairy, but it can also be the plant-based products that, on the one hand, we've already known, yet there is still a lot of plant protein to be discovered. Or, for example, like when you look at pea protein, or that most of the peas actually have been produced either for human consumption, or sometimes these products have been bred to be ideal for direct human consumption or to be used as animal feed, but not being bred to be the ideal meat replacement. So there's a lot of research that can still be done. We also have a company within our consortium that's working on seafood, and another ones that are actually working with algae. So there's a broad spectrum of proteins that we are looking to explore.
Thank you.
Hi guys, thank you so much for your presentations. So my question's for Sebastian. So I might have misinterpreted the slide, so forgive me if I did.
Yep.
But I saw when you were looking at Germany's numbers for charitable giving, it looked like the environmental section was like a huge section for Germany.
Yep.
So I don't know its relation to overall charitable giving in your country, but in the US, I know last year, combined with animals and environment, only 3% of the total giving was going to those, type of organizations. So what do you think Germany is doing differently?
Well, the graphic that I've showed is not only charitable giving, it's also government spendings.
Okay.
So, so when the government spends something on, I don't know, reforestations or anything that's directly involved with this would also be included. So for example, like with health, also that's a lot of what health insurance is spent. So that's not, remember that health was the largest. That's not because people donate necessarily to health causes, but that's government spending. Yeah. So it's more like the budgets that are available within these causes. If you're working to, improve these areas, you can expect to tap into those kinds of budget if you can make a case.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Although you're probably right that in the U.S., even with environmental spending by the government, it's still a lot smaller. I think the EU just cares a lot more than the U.S. does, unfortunately. I think we have time for one more question, actually, if there is. Thank you, everyone, for keeping those questions concise and pointed, by the way. I really appreciate it.
Oh, hi. I'm recording you because you're one of my favorite speakers. And I've seen you at the international conferences, too. But my question is, I'm a huge fan of Beyond Meat and all of their products. And I just feel such excitement whenever they have a press release saying they're going to come out with bacon or, a new. And so I was wondering, and I'm sure you've heard all the press about them being traded now publicly on the stock market. I'm wondering if you could share with me any coordination or cooperation that you're doing with that company, or if you would like to or plan to, because I think your business model of focusing more on, because I'm a vegan for animal rights, but I know that I'm in the minority, and I think that you're right, the way to get to a vegan world. I love Tobias's book. I think you guys are so on when you talk about how the masses are really more receptive to the health-based message and the climate-based message than they are the animal rights message. And I'm one of those people that, whatever reason you go vegan is great. So it seems like you would be a great fit for Beyond Meat. So I was wondering if you could share with me any insight you have into that company, or if you have plans to cooperate with them.
Yeah, well, we work with, I think, a total of 800 companies together, whether it's on the labeling scheme or whether it's with the vegan fairs that we have. For example, I haven't had the whole list, but for the events in China, the trade shows that we've had, there were actually numbers of US companies. And I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think Beyond Meat was actually there, so was Just. And so really getting the visibility out there, and also obviously, for example, for the rankings that we do, because obviously if a supermarket says, well, why are we so bad with rankings? We say, well, you could stock up and have more vegan options, and then we give them a whole list of what they can be using. Or when we work with a company together that has, still uses eggs, we get them in contact with suppliers of eggs alternatives like Claro Foods or something like that. So yes, so we do a lot with companies by getting them exposure, gently motivating their potential customers in terms of supermarkets or restaurant chains. McDonald's, I think they opted for the Nestle burger, not the Beyond Meat burger, but we're actually kind of agnostic, so we don't really support only one company, but any company that makes amazing vegan products.
Okay, thank you. And is Tobias here, the author?
No, not this year, no.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
All right, well that will close the session at this point. 1 minute late, which is not bad for the AIR conference, so thank you so much for being here, everyone, and we'll all stick around for a few more minutes, though we will have to clear out for the next one, so maybe we can, a few minutes up here, and then we can meet outside if there's more questions. Thanks so much.